Today, pain. Watching the first episode of To Your Eternity was an interesting experience, because I had an inkling at what the show probably contained, and yet I was still surprised by it. This is a series written by the same woman who wrote A Silent Voice, a film that resonated with me in a variety of ways. It has a director more historically known for working on a massive amount of Naruto, which isn't all that indicative of a history with deep storytelling, but his stint directing 2 episodes of Serial Experiments Lain surely is. To top it off for this show, they didn't just get some J-pop band or some kind of insert music artist to do the show's OP that is somewhat common. No, they got Hikaru Utada for the OP. Like, this was gonna make me feel things, but I thought I could handle it. OP has to me of so much faith. It should be noted going forward that this is a series impossible to discuss without some semblance of spoilers. To wit, even telling you the specific plot of episode 1 would be like the equivalent of telling you the details behind the opening sequence to Pixar's Up. You should probably watch it yourself first, but I'll leave that to you to decide. Inevitably, we will go through a few details, if only so that I can hopefully explain to you why To Your Eternity should be on your watch list, if it is not already. This video is brought to you by the good people over at Crunchyroll. Visit their website and subscribe to their service to watch new episodes of To Your Eternity as they air in order to be caught up with the discussion as the show continues. So we're just gonna skip over a big chunk of the first episode's plot here. And I'm also going to mention that a lot of this series is kind of still, even now, shrouded in mystery. A handful of episodes in, and really all we've gotten is a bunch of world building, good world building, and a few bits of character development for the main cast. But as usual, what we just have here is a first reaction and not an overview of the show as a whole, because that's impossible. We can only guess at where the show may go, unless, unlike me, you've read the manga and know exactly where this story is going. To Your Eternity revolves around an orb. We don't know where this orb came from, or what the purpose of its creation was supposed to be, at least not yet. But this orb, this seemingly inanimate object, has the ability to morph into different shapes, with the series asking the question of what would happen if this orb eventually morphs into the form of a human. What would occur when this object, now being, becomes something far more complicated than an orb or a stone? It won't know how a human acts, how to speak, how to eat, but very easily and quickly it will learn one important thing: how to die. Thankfully for the orb, death is but a minor inconvenience, as it's not truly alive. This is a series that does not take death lightly, but it also dances with it quite frequently. The orb's form-changing ability seems to be tied to the death of characters that it is in witness to, and I can only imagine the forms it will take as the story progresses, the kinds of deaths it will witness. With the exception of our main character, who feels more otherworldly and science fiction-like more than fantasy, there is a semblance of realism, at least as far as the other characters are concerned. They do come face to face with this immortal being, they go toe to toe with a bear larger than most of their dwellings, but how these humans react and deal with their circumstance is surprisingly grounded, which makes it easy to relate and emote with them. That's, I think, the key point. For example, March here is a young girl chosen by her village's religion to be sacrificed to please their god so that their village may prosper. This is a tradition that has lasted for quite some time, and while most of the villagers have accepted this reality, there is at least one who does not. Much of the plot we have available past episode 1 is focused on this second arc, where March and her friend escape the village and begin traveling with the orb, who March has named Fushi. There are elements of lightheartedness throughout, mostly centered around March, who keeps a very believable, upbeat veneer despite her depressing circumstances. That said, when the second word that Fushi learns how to speak is that of pain, you can't really expect this series to be all sunshine and rainbows. Episode 1 set up a particular format that I expect the rest of the plot to continue with. Whenever there is an introduction to a new arc, the cast will shift, with the goal for Fushi to grow and learn new experiences with new characters, to learn what it is to be human and how that affects the type of human they end up becoming, only to eventually move on to a new arc with new characters and new things to learn. So far, since most of Fushi's new experiences are heavily tied to that of death, it doesn't make me necessarily hopeful for the fates of any character that the show decides to introduce. The show's OP gives hints to that as well, showing the duality of happy-looking characters, but with secondary footage of a more depressing nature overlaid on top. A subtle nod as to where we might be headed. Especially in recent episodes, there's been a focus on emotion specifically, since Fushi doesn't fully understand it, which leads me to suspect that emotions are exactly what the audience is supposed to feel, and even if I am expecting it, I don't feel like I'll be exempt from them. I wasn't exempt from the feelings of episode 1, and I thought I knew what I was getting myself into. It stands to reason that whatever the show has planned going forward, it'll be a ride no matter what. I'm also, I guess, fearful might be the right word. As much as you can be fearful for fictional characters, like, since the whole cast minus the immortal Fushi has basically a permanent death flag built into them, I shouldn't really get attached to any of them unless I am prepared to regret that attachment. But I can't help myself. Like, with March, for example, she is this perfect little ball of positivity and happiness. Like, she's been able to maintain that throughout the several bad things that have happened to her over a couple of episodes. Like, do you really want to see the series try and break her? If the goal ends up being to show us emotions, well, Fushi hasn't truly felt grief yet. We have, but Fushi has not. What is that gonna look like in the end? What's love gonna look like too? Like, is that something that is going to be made manifest? Is Fushi going to look upon their relationship with, like, March as sort of a family love, and would that count? Possibly, but I feel like if love is the emotion that they want to emulate and to teach to this sentient ball of light turned into a small boy, romantic love would probably be a lot better, and I'd be curious to see how that would play out, if so. Like, Fushi spent weeks dying because eating food was not something that immediately came to mind, so I'm quite sure anything of the romantic nature won't come to them naturally either. I'm not sure if the series is going to dedicate arcs to various emotions, or even what emotions the series wants to focus on, but I'm not worried that the material will fail in making an amazing impression. If you are one who thinks that it might, go rewatch A Silent Voice and remind yourself why this particular author deserves the benefit of the doubt. I say rewatch because, of course, you've already at least watched it once by now, right? My audience? Of course you have. I have faith in you. But seriously, A Silent Voice has so many narrative layers, all densely packed into a runtime of just over 2 hours, so I'm excited to see the remainder of this narrative adapted. Sure, a lot of credit for A Silent Voice goes to that film's production staff, and I don't think that there are many crossovers, but the material is solid. So if the production is up to snuff, there should be nothing to worry about. Right? Well, if anything about the show's production gives me pause, it's the production studio, Brainspace. While historically their catalog has been pretty high profile, what they've historically done matters far less to me compared to what they've handled recently. Arguably, they haven't had anything of a kind of, like, anime of the season/year quality since the original series of Snafu, but that was 8 years ago. Wait, did I just say anime of the season? Yes! Did I stutter? I know that tends to be the case if you look back over my history of doing first reactions of, like, seasons and years, but that's usually because I like talking about the shows that ring out to me, and in a season that's even more packed than last season, which itself was an overstacked season, that hopefully should say something if I'm willing to attach that label to the show. As it stands, To Your Eternity is slated to get 20 episodes. Not entirely sure how many arcs that turns into, especially since the promotional art really only covers, 3 arcs total? The manga at present has over 120 chapters or so there's going to be a point where things do end off. And hopefully things will be spaced out such that the ending whatever it is satisfying enough. Though with the jumps between arcs, it's entirely possible that one or two of those might be skipped in lieu of a few quick scenes to show any important information before moving on to either more popular or more important arcs of the story, but that's just the cynic in me who remembers other adaptations that have done similar things poorly. So should you watch To Your Eternity? Yes. That may change, of course, by the time the series ends, but if I'm right about the shifting of arcs, then how those are handled will massively change how the show turns out overall. It would be one thing if this was an episodic show with a new arc every episode, like Mushishi or Kino's Journey, but with multi-episode arcs that really, really want us invested in all of the different characters, well, we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. I can say that so far this series has been a highlight of the season, and between the 11 shows that I'm still following so far, it's probably near the top. I've already dropped several shows already for various reasons. As usual, there will be a link in the description to go watch the series on Crunchyroll, who were nice enough to sponsor this episode as well. And lastly, a very special thank you to our patrons who support the work that I do and allow me to keep doing what I do in the way that I want to do it. And for that, I am eternally thankful. Specifically, though, I would like to give thanks to patrons Ryfen Bonaparte, Siri Yamako, Wago221, Hector Montemayor, and Rune Jacobson for being especially awesome. Until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, watch more anime and stay frosty.